welcome to Know What's Cooking, where we are changing the world one recipe at a time with a splash of physics. And today, we're changing the world with a skillet pizza. So let's go ahead and get started. This recipe comes together really quickly, so quickly in fact that the toppings that you choose for your pizza won't have time to cook because this pizza will never see the inside of the oven, which is why it's a really great low energy cooking strategy. I've already started preheating the skillet here, and I'm going to go ahead and just prep my vegetables and get those sauteing while we put the crust together. I'm choosing to stay super simple and so I've chosen some beautiful peppers, right? Good time to talk about how to source vegetables. So really great to choose vegetables with no packaging, no bag or plastic container, and also the more we can choose them locally sourced, the more we drop the transportation energy and support our local economy as well. So I'm going to just put on a couple of red peppers and also add a little bit of these yellow peppers. This looks really delicious. I'm going to turn down the burner a little bit. And cut these into some manageable pieces. I'm also going to add a little bit of an onion here as well, just a slice of an onion. So this recipe that I am showing here is for one 10-inch skillet. So it really is redefining fast food, because we can go from the idea of like, gee, it sounds like it would be good. It's getting a little too hot there. So we can go from the idea of, gee, I think it would be really delicious to have a pizza today, to having actually a steamy hot pizza on your plate in the matter of about 12 minutes. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put some oil on here. When we're working in high temperature environments like this cast iron skillet, it's good to choose an oil with a high smoke point, and canola oil is a really good choice there. So we're going to go ahead and put these vegetables on there. We see that nice satisfying sear. I'm also going to put some black beans, and I know I just lost some of you because y'all are like, that woman's crazy, black beans do not belong on a pizza. At which point I would remind you that we are saving the world with the pizza, and so we're going to have to kind of get creative. Not only that, but if you've never had black beans on a pizza, I would recommend you give it a try. It's super delicious. And if we look at the alternative to add protein to our pizza, say ground beef for example, black beans well, the ground beef has about 13.5 times more greenhouse gas emissions to grow it and to process it and to bring it to your home. So we've greatly reduced the environmental impact of our food system if we can replace some of our animal proteins with plant proteins. I am, however, going to add a splash of pepperoni. I chose turkey pepperoni. It's a lower environmental impact. I like these animal proteins that have a lot of flavor because you get a huge flavor punch with very little sort of environmental or addition of animal proteins. Obviously, all of this is optional. You can put whatever makes you joyful on your pizza. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to leave that to saute while I go ahead and put together the crust. So again, because this is such a fast recipe, traditionally a pizza crust would have yeast in it, and the yeast would sit for a while and produce carbon dioxide, and that's what gives us the rise and a nice fluffy crust. I don't have time for that in this crust because it's going to come together so quickly. So instead, I'm going to use a crust that has baking powder, and like we would in a muffin, and the baking powder will react with the other ingredients in the crust to give us that rise. So this needs 3/4 of a cup of flour. What flour should we choose? Very good question. So I am choosing, of the 3/4 of a cup, to use 2/3 or a half a cup of whole wheat, and then 1/4 of white. So if you look at the kernel of wheat, the way it is grown, it looks something like this, right? And there are 3 parts to this wheat kernel. The outer part, or the bran, and then the white fluffy part inside is called the endosperm, and then the little tiny germ is this little part of the inside that becomes the future wheat plant if we were to plant it. It ends up, when we use just all-purpose flour, we're only using that white fluffy endosperm, and so we're discarding about 80% of the protein of the wheat and more than 90% of the iron and the fiber, right? And not only that nutritionally, but also we grow the wheat as a whole piece, and so if we're only using the white part, we are throwing away or maybe converting into animal feed most of the nutrition of that wheat kernel, and that produces a lot of food waste. So from a sustainability perspective also, the more we move our grains into whole grains, the more sustainable our food system becomes. All right, that is looking so completely delicious. Okay, let's go ahead and finish this crust here. So we're going to add about 1/3 teaspoon of salt. I don't have 1/3 teaspoon, so just go with a little less than 1/2. That should work. Again, that baking powder I talked about. So this is going to give us that fluffiness in our crust. I'm also going to add about 1 teaspoon of olive oil. Just going to guesstimate that. And lastly, I'm going to add about 1/4 cup of water. Now the amount of water that you choose or that you need will really depend on the flours that you chose. Different flours have different hydration rates. So just start with a little less than you think you need and start mixing it together. If you find that the dough isn't holding together well, it needs more water. If you find that the dough is sticky, then actually you probably put too much water, just add a little more flour. Okay, so this is looking pretty decent. I think that is going to work just fine, actually. I'm going to add just a drop more of water here. Makes it a little bit crumbly. Just maybe a drop more. Okay, and I'm going to stir my vegetables here. Oh, that looks so good. Okay, perfect. So now I'm just going to turn this out onto the counter so we can knead it into a pizza-like shape. Okay, yeah, that feels nice. If anything, a tiny bit sticky. I'm going to add a little bit of flour on my countertop so that it doesn't stick too much. Right, and so now all we're trying to do is sort of combine it together. I love this kneading. Feels really nice, right? It's a great stress reliever. I think we all need to knead. Okay. So the next step, it's all together, it feels nice and soft, is we're just going to try to put this into a 10-inch to match the size of our skillet, about a 10-inch circular-like shape. Does not have to be perfectly circular. I actually like a pizza with a bit of personality, right? A circular pizza, to me, is an indication it was a manufactured pizza. We would like a pizza that has some personality. So we're going to roll it into about a 10-inch circle here. Again, you are welcome to be as creative as you would like. That looks pretty perfect. So the theory of this pizza is that we're going to put it on the skillet, and the bottom of it is going to cook. Oh, I hate when that happens. The bottom of it is going to cook. After a couple of minutes, we're going to flip it over so that the cooked part is up, and then we can add our toppings and allow the bottom to cook. Okay, these toppings are perfect. We're just going to scoot these off for a minute so that we can put our dough directly on the skillet. Perfect. Little lone pepperoni. Okay, so we're going to add a little more oil. Again, I'm choosing to use just a silicone brush and a bowl of canola oil. If you choose to use this rather than non-stick cooking spray, for example, it costs about 10 times less, right? So when you buy that spray oil, it's really expensive and also comes with a lot of single-use packaging. So that's another good way to reduce the environmental impact of our kitchen, is by trying to reduce single-use packaging. All right, so the pizza's on there. If anything, the skillet was maybe not quite hot enough. We're going to turn it up a little bit and give it about 2 or 3 minutes in order for that bottom to set. While the bottom of this is setting, I want to talk about how it is this pizza actually is saving the world. And so what we're trying to do here is come up with a strategy where we can have a pizza without relying on frozen pizzas. That's not to say you should never buy a frozen pizza. I am never about perfection. I definitely buy a frozen pizza sometimes. But if we have some alternate strategies, it helps to reduce the energy of our food system. If you think about a frozen pizza, all these ingredients have to be shipped to the pizza manufacturing facility, right? There, they're assembled into a pizza-like product, wrapped in plastic that's not recyclable, then in a cardboard box, and then frozen solid. Once it's frozen solid, it's got to stay frozen at the manufacturing facility, in transportation, so it's not bad enough we're transporting the pizza, but we're transporting it in a gigantic freezer, which is really high energy, and then it has to stay frozen at the grocery store and at your home, sometimes justifying a second freezer in the garage. So obviously, if we can bring a pizza together like this with ingredients that mainly shipped at room temperature, we've done a huge reduction in the energy of our food system. Okay, I think that pizza is looking really nice. I'm going to go ahead and put a little brush of oil on the top of this before I flip it over. Again, this top is the raw part, so it is now going to see that nice hot skillet, and the top is going to be at the top. Oh, that looks so beautiful. Okay, perfect. So it's time to put our toppings on fairly quickly here. I'm going to go ahead and turn the burner down a bit to give us a little more time for the topping. All right, so we're putting some tomato sauce on there, and again, you top this however you like. I really encourage creativity. I'm going to put a splash of Italian seasoning perhaps, and then we're going to dump all of these delicious ingredients that we pre-sauteed that are nice and already warm and charred, right? We accomplished that Maillard reaction, or that caramelization on these, which give us those edges that are brown, and really the complex flavors form when we get to those high temperatures that we can only accomplish when the vegetables were directly on the skillet, because this thing is never going to be in an oven, right? So that's one of the energy savings here of this pizza, is that rather than heating the 35 pounds of steel that is in your oven for one simple pizza, all we have to heat is this one small skillet, and so that is a huge energy savings. All right, we top it with a little bit of cheese, and then the final step is to put a lid on it. The lid will then trap that steam and allow the cheese to melt while the bottom's setting. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the burner off at this point, right? It's a good time to talk about the advantages of skillet material. So my husband, who is a material scientist, and myself just published an academic paper on the thermodynamics of skillet material and how that pertains to their sustainability. I'll put a link to that below, and it's also on my website, which I will also include below in the comments. So it ends up that cast iron has stood this test of time for good thermodynamic reasons. If we think about thermal conductivity only, that's how well a material moves heat through it, cast iron is relatively low conductor as compared to, say, copper or aluminum or other materials we may choose. In a skillet, it ends up that's a really good thing, especially for energy efficiency. Because what it means is that the heat that's coming in from the bottom is going to stay at the bottom of the pan. The more conductive plates sheet that energy up to the edge of the skillet. I don't really care what the temperature of the edge of my skillet is. I would rather that thermal energy stay at the bottom where the food is located. There's a lot of other advantages of cast iron also. Another one I'm demonstrating here is that it's really thermally sluggish, and that means it has a really high heat capacity. The combination of its specific heat and its mass make it really slow to respond, slow to cool, and slow to heat. So since I already had the skillet hot and I was pretty much done cooking, I could just turn the burner off and let the residual heat that's already in the skillet do the remainder of the cooking for me. So there's an additional energy savings here. So again, we're just going to give this a couple more minutes. I'm mainly looking for the point in time that that cheese is melted in this nice steamy environment. Not only are we reducing the energy of our food system by doing this, but we're also reducing the cost. So I did a quick analysis of frozen pizzas versus the ingredients that went into this. This pizza costs about a third of what a frozen pizza would cost the equivalent for the equivalent size pizza. So yeah, we've reduced the energy, we've increased the nutrition, we've reduced the energy, transportation energy cost. This is a great thing, right? Okay, I think we're ready. When I take this top off, we're going to see when the steam hits the skillet, right, we still have a pretty good sizzle, which tells us even though the burner has been off for a long time, the skillet is still a really nice hot temperature. So there you have it. We're going to take a peek at the bottom, and we can see we have some nice crusty parts there. So that is fully set. We had some nice rise in this crust too, right? It's not flat, but it's got some good squishiness to it. And so that's that baking powder that gave us that loft. There you have it, skillet pizza, food physics at its finest. I'm Carla Ramsdell, and I really believe in the power of food to heal us and heal our planet. Please subscribe so you too can become part of the food physics revolution, where we're learning how to change the world with delicious food, one recipe at a time. Thank you.